At that point, I hated myself. I was blaming myself for where I was. I was telling myself, I remember that first night sleeping on the couch, I couldn't sleep. I was, very upset, and I was telling myself, this is your fault. You did this to yourself. Nobody made you do any of this, and look at you now. And the most amazing thing happened, because after 18 months, literally the very next week, I got a job offer. Okay. My first one in 18 months. And looking back, I think, the saying about a door closing and a window opening, or needing to hit rock bottom so that you can finally bounce back, how could I not believe in it after that?
Welcome to the Behind the Fitness podcast, where we interview the world's most motivating and successful fitness trainers, instructors, and coaches to inspire people to be their very best every day. Thanks for joining me today. I'm your host, Ted James. Now let's get going. Our guest is the author of the book, Those Happy Moments, and she's helped thousands of people with pain and fatigue feel better in their own bodies through yoga. I want to welcome Joelle Fixson. Today, we're going to really get to know Joelle and understand how as little as 5 minutes of yoga a day can change your life. But first, Joelle, can you tell us something that you believe can make you successful in health or fitness that many people might disagree with?
Yeah, well, first of all, hi everyone. It's really nice to be here. Thanks for having me. I think something that we tend to hear, we tend to read about or be told, especially those of us who maybe don't have much of a background with health and fitness, is that there's a certain number of minutes that you need to be doing, that we should all be doing. I don't even really know what the advice is these days, that it's maybe half an hour 5 times a week or something like that. And that can sound, I think, really overwhelming to many of us. I know it certainly sounded like that to me before I got into any sort of regular fitness in my daily life. And I disagree with that. I actually think that we should recognize the efforts that people start putting in. And I think you can see a lot of benefits from starting small. So on my YouTube channel, a lot of my videos are around 10 minutes long. And something I say in many of those videos at the end is that 10 minutes a day, even if that's all you've got, can really make a difference in your body and mind. And I really believe that, and I've felt it for myself. I've experienced moments where I really only had a tiny little slot of time, and I came out of a short workout or a short yoga class or whatever it is, feeling really energized, feeling better about myself, feeling happier even. So I think we should celebrate the small efforts that we start to put in, and 10 minutes can lead to more.
I agree. And I think that's why some people don't get into any kind of routine or, they think they don't have the time. They're just too busy all the time and don't make it a priority. And then they never take those little steps each day. And that, short amount of time can totally change your mental aspect as well, like you said. So I think that's great advice.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, if I think back to the first workout of any kind that I did with any regularity was when I think out of like the bargain barrel at Best Buy or something, I had bought a VHS cassette, so I'm really dating myself here, and it was a Pilates workout, and it was 20 minutes long. This was, I think, even before YouTube or anything, and I just did those same 20 minutes over and over and over. And after a while, I started noticing that I was getting much better at the exercises and I was feeling stronger. And, that was just a small thing that I was doing kind of here and there. So let's not negate what it takes to show up for any amount, really, of conscious movement.
Yes, for sure. All right. Well, can you give us a little bit more background on yourself and then tell us what drove you to find your love for yoga in the beginning? What is your story behind why you do what you do?
Yeah, sure. So I come from a pretty international background. So I'm half Swiss, half American, and I'm currently living in Germany. So I grew up speaking English and French. I grew up with kind of some diversity, I guess, in that sense in my background. But what I didn't have at all growing up was any sort of active background. So I didn't come from an athletic family. I never did any sort of team sports. I was always the last person picked in gym class. I was super uncoordinated. I mean, you name it. It was really just not part of my life, and not even something that I was ever really interested in when I was younger. And then when I was a teenager, kind of compounded on top of that, I had two things happen to me. So the first is I was hospitalized for nephritis, so kidney inflammation, pretty severe at the time. And the second is shortly thereafter, I was diagnosed with something called fibromyalgia, which is a chronic pain disorder that I've been living with ever since. So I kind of used those things, particularly fibromyalgia. I think I built that up in my own mind as a reason why I couldn't exercise, or why that simply wasn't for me. It was kind of just a ready-made excuse probably in my subconscious. So it wasn't until my late 20s, maybe even early 30s, that I even really allowed myself to consider whether there was anything that I could do for myself to feel better. It had just become ingrained in me that I was somebody who lived with chronic pain, who wasn't very active, who didn't move a lot, and someone where it was just kind of going to always be this way for me. And it took me literally decades to start to challenge that a little bit for myself. Okay. And when I finally did, I didn't turn straight to yoga. It was kind of a circuitous route a little bit. So like I said, I had that Pilates VHS cassette at some point. I had tried probably a dance class here and there. I had very briefly signed up for a gym. And so I'd kind of, I guess, dipped a toe here and there into different forms of exercise. And I don't even really remember when I came to yoga. I couldn't tell you when or where exactly I took my first ever yoga class. It wasn't love at first sight. I think it was probably something that I periodically kind of circled back to, maybe trying a different teacher or a different style. And also with the rise of YouTube, there were just more things that you could also start doing from home. Right. And that just kind of became part of my routine at some point. And again, I think it was a really gradual thing for me. I didn't just fall right into it and get won over all at once. So at some point I found that I was loving it more and more, and I wanted to make, I guess, a bit of an official commitment to myself, which is why I ended up doing a yoga teacher training, not at all with the intention of ever teaching yoga to anyone, but more just to kind of deepen my own knowledge and prove to myself that I was something who could actually complete something with kind of a fitness or physical angle to it. Okay. And so that's kind of how I became a teacher. I didn't go right into teaching right after that. I had always been in the corporate world. So I had worked a series of managerial jobs in different industries. And it really wasn't until the pandemic hit, when I was actually working in the travel industry at the time, which of course was very, very tough, or hit very hard. And, so there were mass layoffs. I lost my job. And all of a sudden I was kind of thinking, well, what am I going to do? And I started YouTube as almost like a little bit of a placeholder. So I just sort of assumed, I'll find another corporate job. But in the meantime, maybe I can start up a little bit of a side project doing something I really enjoy. And what I found really quickly is that I enjoyed doing that. I enjoyed teaching that and sharing yoga with people, much more than I had ever enjoyed anything else I'd ever done. And pretty quickly I found that what I wanted to really specialize in was helping people who I could most empathize with. So people, again, living with chronic pain, or people coming off of injuries, or just dealing with various types of discomfort, or on the mental side, people who maybe didn't think that they could ever do yoga, or didn't think that they could ever get stronger or get more flexible or believe in themselves in a certain way. So that really speaks to me, and it's I think what's kept me in it is being able to interact a little bit with people online and hear that they're starting to believe more in themselves and feel better in their bodies.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, that has to feel great just to be able to help these people.
Yeah. There's honestly, there's nothing that I love more than getting a comment on one of my videos from someone saying something like, "Oh, I found you because I searched, I don't know, yoga for hip pain or something like that. And now my hip pain is gone, but I still keep coming back to yoga because either I miss it when I skip a day, or I find that I have more energy, or I'm feeling more calm." Just all of the different benefits that people are getting out of it is really great.
That is great. And I think it's great that you help people, sounds like shift their identity a little bit from someone who, I'm not an active person, I have this chronic illness or something like that, and or even if you don't have, some chronic health issue, there's so many people out there that they just don't see themselves in their identity as somebody who is healthy or can be healthy, or they've gone down the wrong path too far and they think like there's no way to correct this, or they've gone down that path so far and that's created other health issues in their life. But and people don't like to fail at things, and that's why I think there's a lot of people who just decide like, I'm not good, I'm not, kind of like you said earlier, I'm not good at being coordinated or these physical activities. I'm not going to ever try at that. I am better at something else. I excel at something else. It's easier. But when you start realizing that you're one whole person, your brain is attached to your body also, and you can start taking these steps to be healthier each day, whether it's just 10 minutes of yoga, then I think that's the transformation and that you're probably seeing in a lot of people. And that's why people are attracted to your yoga practice and teachings.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I think what you said about identity is really important. I think many of us, myself included, tend to put ourselves into boxes, not just with fitness, but with, anything that we work on or challenges that we've maybe had in the past that have really kind of stuck with us. I get questions, for instance, sometimes from people saying, how can you have fibromyalgia and also be a yoga teacher? For some people, that just doesn't make sense. It doesn't compute. Right. And what I say to them, and I don't say this lightly because it took me a long time to start to feel like this, is fibromyalgia is just one tiny, tiny, tiny little piece of who I am. It doesn't get to dictate what I can do. It doesn't get to tell me that I can or cannot do something. It might be something I have to kind of take into consideration once in a while, but it's not in the driver's seat of my life. So, and we all deal with different things. We're all kind of bringing different emotional and physical baggage to whatever journey we happen to be on at this moment. But I think it's worth questioning that story that we're telling ourselves about our own identity, because sometimes it's worth, we may not be the same person that we were when that story first got told inside our head.
That's true. Yes. Yeah. I can relate. So it's been probably about 10 years now, but I was active, and then I was playing in a flag football league and ran into somebody else, and my left collarbone completely shattered into like 30 pieces.
Yeah.
And now it's metal, but after that, I just wasn't active for quite a while because I had the injury, and then I just kind of like, I feel like you're always changing, whether it's for the better or the worse. And I stopped being active after that for a while, just because I couldn't do anything for quite a while, and because of that injury. But even after it started to heal, I mean, I just was in a routine of not being active, and I definitely put on weight, and it took actually somebody else, a friend of mine, to kind of help me out and start getting me more active. And a lot of times that's what happens. It's somebody else that you meet, and whether it's in person or possibly online with 10 minutes of yoga.
Sure.
And he helped me out to get back into an active lifestyle. But yeah, I think I kind of just found myself in a place of non-activity, and I definitely more weight than I think I ever had in my life. So yeah. But well,
yeah, and it's easy to see how that can happen. Not only when you're coming off of something, physically where you have to rest. I mean that is important for your body.
Yes.
But also mentally, where there's maybe even a fear of, well, but if I start to work out again, that means I could get hurt again, or that means I'm finally almost better, but what if I move backwards, if I kind of do a wrong move or something in football? I think those are very real concerns, and not something to take lightly, but as you said, there's a downside as well, right? Whether that's weight gain, whether that's just feeling kind of more sluggish, or whether that is subconsciously starting to rewrite again your whole story of who you are, and I guess I'm someone who doesn't work out anymore. So
right, yes. Well, can we talk more about having a regular yoga practice, and how can doing yoga daily make a difference and like transform our lives? Do you have any examples of people who have had these transformations with just doing little bits of yoga each day?
Sure, yeah. So I think first of all that anything we do daily, or anything we do with any regularity, will transform our life. It just might be for better or worse, right? If all I do is sit on the couch each day eating potato chips and watching Netflix, I'm going to get really good at that. And I'm also going to miss out on other areas of life, on interactions with other people, and probably on building kind of the healthiest life that I could for myself. So I don't think, I'm not here to tell everybody that every single person needs to get into yoga. Everybody needs to do yoga each and every day, because that's not realistic. I always find it's much more important for each individual person to find what works for them, what they feel they can stick to, what they enjoy, what challenges them. For me,
Agreed.
Yoga happens to be number one on that list, but that might be different for you or for somebody else. That said, with yoga specifically, since that is kind of the field that I know best, I think yoga is first of all a challenging thing to define. A lot of people kind of come at it from different ways in terms of what they believe yoga to be. But I think that one thing we can all agree on is that yoga is a very personal practice, and we come to it for different reasons. So some people are looking to get stronger. Some people are looking to get more flexible. Some people are maybe looking for the more mental aspects. So maybe they need more calm in their life, or more, trying to manage stress. So various reasons that might get someone into their first ever yoga class. I think what helps people stick to it, at least in my own experience and also what I've seen in other people, is when you start to get benefits out of it that are different from the one that brought you to yoga in the first place. So if you came to yoga originally because you were hoping to get more flexible, but lo and behold, you found after some regular practice that you were feeling more energized, or you were feeling more calm, or maybe more confident because you started to learn some new postures that maybe you couldn't do in that very first class. I think that's what gets people coming back over the longer term. And that's what's so great about it, I think, is you can have a lot of those short-term wins, because maybe 10 minutes will make your back pain feel a lot better than it did 10 minutes before. Mm-hmm. But you'll also get those long-term gains as well, where you start to see transformation. I know for myself, 'cause I'm about to turn 40, and I'm much stronger than I was when I turned 30, or even when I turned 20. So it's really something that is never too late to start. I've seen that also, again, with a lot of the comments that I got on my channel of people saying, oh, well, I started out doing 1 10-minute video a day, and now I mix and match and I do 3 a day, or whatever that might look like. And so I just love hearing kind of these little tidbits that people will write down and share with me and with the rest of the community in terms of what keeps them coming back. what makes them want more, especially on something like YouTube, because nobody's forcing you to do a YouTube video, right? There's no payment involved. There's nobody witnessing you there because there isn't that live interaction component. So really kudos to anyone who seeks out what works for them and kind of finds a way to fit it into their life.
Yes, I agree. I definitely started yoga after a different injury, but it was for flexibility and strength. And then the longer I've done it now, the mental aspect of it is just as rewarding as the flexibility and strength and all of that for your core and everything. So I think that I can relate to what you said for sure, and that's what makes me come back more, because I know that there's a lot of benefits and not just one thing. It's not just stretching. There's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, it always kind of breaks my heart a little bit and I've had friends say this to my face even, oh, I'd love to try yoga, but I'm not flexible enough. And that is such the backward story of how I wish people would feel. And of course, I can't drag them to yoga class with me. Everyone needs to kind of find the reason that will get them in the door, so to speak. But if you're out there and maybe that's the story you've been telling yourself, please don't let that stop you. Please think what it would be like to, instead of be telling that story that I'm not flexible enough or I'm not strong enough or whatever, think how you might feel 1 month from now. Maybe you take 4 classes between today and 1 month from now, and how might your story change in that time? Are you still going to say you're not flexible enough to do yoga? Because there's lots of really inflexible people who do lots of yoga.
Yes.
So, just a little challenge maybe for everyone out there.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I don't think I could touch my toes until I was like in my mid-20s, and started. I think yoga probably had a lot to do with that. And I also started focusing on my flexibility more outside of yoga also. But yes, I was very unflexible, especially in my hamstrings. So I can relate to everything you said.
That's normal, right? There's nothing per se wrong with that. It just means that you're probably going to see gains really quickly if you're kind of starting from way back there in the beginning. The gains are quite noticeable.
Right. If you think you can't do yoga, you probably need to do yoga more than anybody else, I would say.
True.
Well, can you tell us about your book that you wrote, Those Happy Moments, and how did you come to create the book?
Sure. Yeah. So this was kind of off the back of a pretty tough time in my life where I kind of, I guess, hit my own version of rock bottom. And then I got an out, I suppose, or somebody threw me a lifeline, and that I got a new job opportunity. I moved, I was living in San Francisco at the time. I moved to London. And so my whole life changed very radically with living in a new country, meeting new people, working a new job. So it was a lot at once, and it was almost without exception, all of it was really positive. So I came, I would say, very quickly out of what was a depression for me. So that was, I was very fortunate in that regard. But after a couple of months, after all of those big changes, I found that I was, despite being dramatically happier than I had been maybe 6 months before, I was still maybe not quite as happy as I should be, or I was maybe not recognizing enough all of the reasons for which I was so lucky, all of the great things that I had in my life. And so I kind of challenged myself on January 1st of the following year to start a blog. And every day during that whole year, I wrote about one thing that had made me happy that day. And sometimes it was really big things. Maybe I got to go on a trip, or my mom came to visit or something like that. But more often than not, it was something small. It would be, I took a different path to get to work that day, or I tried this new cupcake shop down the street, or I wrote a letter to a friend that I hadn't, talked to in a couple of months. And so at the end of this year, I found that I had just gotten to know myself so much better. I had these 365 happy moments, as I called them, and they had just become by that point so innate, so ingrained. I was just noticing happy moments left and right, and it was getting to the point where in the evenings, I didn't have to struggle to think, well, what could I write about today? It was more like, oh, well, I've got 5 or 6 different things. Which do I choose for today? So after completing that year, the following year, I kind of reread all 365 entries, and I started to see all these patterns that I hadn't necessarily picked up in the moment.
Okay.
So there were just sort of categories of happy moments that kept jumping out at me that I hadn't seen before. And I just started to wonder, well, that might be something that other people could benefit from as well. I think we can all benefit from just that little bit of extra happiness in everyday life. So I kind of converted the blog into a book with examples, with guides, with exercises as well, to kind of challenge people to, as I say in the book, to go out and find, notice, and create ultimately happy moments for yourself. Because the more you find them and the more you notice them in the life you're already living, the more you start to want more of them, and the more that incentivizes you to create happy moments for yourself and also hopefully for the people around you. So it was a little bit of a passion project of mine, from which I really benefited. And for anybody who thinks that noticing small things in their life can't make an overall difference. I mean, that was the year I started dating my husband. That was the year I became a yoga teacher. So many big things happened to me that year. And I honestly don't think that they would have, or not in the same way, if I hadn't been already extremely tuned in to the smaller happy moments.
That is very cool. Just really recognizing gratitude, right?
Yeah. I think gratitude is almost like a superpower. And I know that sounds hokey, and yoga sometimes has this sort of woo-woo reputation, which is, I think, another reason that keeps people away from trying yoga if they're maybe a little bit skeptical about that side of things. First of all, not all yoga has to be like that. Not all teachers teach like that. It's more important to find a teacher that kind of speaks to you and resonates with you. But yeah, I think any of us can benefit from doing a little bit of gratitude practice each day, or just notice when something good happens to you. Don't just smile about it, but just take a moment to kind of take stock of that. And wow, aren't I lucky that this good thing happened to me? I'm really grateful for that. So I still need that reminder, by the way. I'm not saying that, that it stays with you forever, or that you never have to put effort into it, but I think that's everybody. It's a good one. Yeah.
I think it's so much easier to hold on to those negative things throughout your day, because those stick in your mind. But if you're intentional and mindful about, being grateful for the good thing that happened that day, or whatever made you happy, or whatever you think's that positive in that day, I agree that's got to be life-changing. Like, it sounds like it totally changed your life.
Yeah, it did. I'm very grateful for it. How's that for full circle?
Yeah. You said you started becoming a yoga teacher during this year. Can you talk about how it impacted your yoga teaching more?
Sure. So I think I don't know if it dramatically changed the way that I approach my yoga teaching, but I think it probably enhanced what would have kind of been my approach anyway. So, like I said, my primary focus, not exclusive focus, but I do have a lot of videos about pain relief and pain management, and I really try to approach that from an empathetic and compassionate angle, because again, I think anybody out there, if you are in pain, or if it's difficult, again, for you to even imagine yourself taking a yoga class, the fact that you even sought out this class to begin with and that you're trying something, that's already a huge step. You've already kind of done the hardest part. You're doing something for yourself. And I think that's worth celebrating. So that's kind of the approach that I think I would have taken anyway, because I can understand where those people are coming from, and that was me too, not all that long ago. I think thinking so much about happiness and having that kind of as a year-long project with the blog, and then the book the following year, has probably made me think about that even more, because honestly, none of us ever really knows what's going on with someone else, whether they're dealing with, aches and pains in their physical bodies, whether they're dealing with something just going on in their life that they may or may not be talking to someone about. So I think being tuned into my own happiness has made me a little bit more conscious of how someone else might be feeling, and how perhaps I can try to inspire them to do something for themselves as well. In my case, most likely by taking a yoga class. And ultimately, if someone comes out of one of my class feeling just that little bit happier than when they went in, then hopefully that means I'm doing something right.
I'm sure you are, and I'm sure you're impacting quite a few people with that. Well, I know we've already talked about some of the challenges that you've had throughout your life, whether it's with pain or lack of happiness or others. But can you tell us a moment in your life when you were really at your lowest, and how did you overcome that, and what did you learn from being in that place?
Yeah, so this was kind of the precursor, I guess, to my happiness experiment. So this was about 6.5 years ago now. So the background to what happened even before that is that I had gone back to school to get my MBA. So I had basically poured all of my savings into going to get this fancy degree that I was convinced at the time was going to, I guess, put me on the path to a successful life, whatever I thought that meant at the time.
Okay.
So I went back, I got my MBA, and it was a great program, and I enjoyed it, but I came out of there actually with more questions than what I had gone in with. And I also came out, importantly, without a job offer. And in fact, it took me 18 months post-graduation to find a job. I think there were 500 people in my graduating class, and I was the very last one to find a job.
Oh, no.
So I ended up working in a supermarket, which there's nothing wrong with that, but it was obviously not why I had gone back to school, and again, basically wiped out my savings for that. So I was going on interviews all the time, by the way. I just wasn't getting a job offer. And looking back, I think the reason I was getting one but not the other is because I was probably coming across as increasingly desperate, increasingly depressed. And I think that was coming through, whether or not people were sort of consciously noticing that about me. And at the time, I was also in a really unhealthy relationship. I was living in my boyfriend's apartment in San Francisco, and then he broke up with me very suddenly. So all of a sudden, I had no home, no relationship, no money.
Oh my!
It was really tough. I was sleeping on a friend's couch. And the worst part of it all, and this is why I consider it my rock bottom, is not even so much what was going on externally, which was a lot, but internally at that point, I hated myself. I was blaming myself for where I was. I was telling myself, I remember that first night sleeping on the couch, I couldn't sleep. I was very upset, and I was telling myself, this is your fault. You did this to yourself. Nobody made you do any of this, and look at you now. And the most amazing thing happened, because after 18 months, literally the very next week, I got a job offer. Okay. My first one in 18 months. And looking back, I think, the saying about a door closing and a window opening, or needing to hit rock bottom so that you can finally bounce back, how could I not believe in it after that? I got a job offer. It was a well-paid job. It was, like I said, in London. My whole life changed within the space of that week. So what did I learn from it? I think what I take away from it now, and what I try to remind myself whenever I go through a tough moment, even now, is that life is not out to get you. There's always something out there. There's always lifelines out there. Even when I was at my lowest, I still was lucky to have my friend Liz, who let me sleep on her couch. I still was lucky to have my parents who still loved me. I was lucky to have that job in the supermarket, because otherwise I would have been in even bigger trouble.
Right.
So I think that I was too far gone to see all of that, but there must have been something in me still that still had like that tiny bit of trust, or that tiny bit of hope that things could still work out. And so if I guess what I would say to someone who's going through a really, really, really tough time, and who doesn't even want to be comforted or told that that everything's going to be all right, 'cause sometimes it's just too much to hear that when you feel like that that's not true, is just trust that even if it doesn't seem possible, trust that this is part of a bigger story, and that you will be able to look back on this as part of that story, part of your journey. And that's how I see it now. And honestly, that I'm grateful for going through something like that I think made me a lot stronger, honestly.
Oh man, that is a powerful story. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
At what point did you start this year of when you wrote your book? Or I guess it wasn't a book at that point, it was a blog, but at what point in there did you start? Was it after you moved?
Yeah, that was after. So let's see, I moved to London in July 2015, and I started the blog the following January 1st. So about 5.5 months later-ish.
Okay. Do you think after you moved there and your life changed, and I'm sure you had a ton of gratitude for what you had at that point after where you had been. Oh, yes. Do you think that transformed it all into you starting to recognize more? You needed to see the gratitude. Do you think that kind of played together, or?
Yeah, I definitely think that was an important first step. I wasn't thinking of it that way at the time, of course, but I think that the bigger things in my life at that point were starting to fall into place, because I had a home, I had a roof over my head, I had money coming in, so I wasn't worried about buying food. And once those things were taken care of, I think that gave me the space, the mental and emotional space to start looking for what else there was, or what else I should be recognizing, or even what else I could do for someone else. Because looking back at that time, I was, again, very lucky to have some really great friends in my life, but I'm not sure that I was a great friend at the time, because I was just going through so much that I didn't have a whole lot of energy to give to other people at that point. So I think that once things had shifted for me pretty dramatically, it became more of a priority also to hopefully start bringing more positivity, or at least more friendship, into my relationships with other people too. Okay.
Yeah, that's great. All right, well, and now you are a yoga teacher and you're spreading positivity to all kinds of people. Like your reach is pretty long now. And now that you are a yoga teacher, what would you say the best resources that have helped you along the way that you'd be able to share with us?
Yeah, so I have, well, there's, I guess, a couple of well, I'll tell you about one, I guess, self-developed resource, and then a couple of maybe public type resources that I think others might enjoy as well. So on the self-developed side, so I'm a complete nerd, and I really love building good habits. And so I have right now, I mean, if you were to walk into my bedroom and open my closet door, I have taped inside of my closet, I literally have this spreadsheet that I print out at the beginning of every month with the habits that I want to work on during the month. And if I did a particular thing or worked on a particular habit on a day, I get a green check mark at the end of the day, and I get a red cross if I did not. Oh, okay. And so towards the end of the month, my objective is basically to have more green than red. And that is, for whatever reason, for me, super validating. It's just kind of fun for me to see my own progress towards some of my goals that I have. So one of my, just to give you an example, perhaps, one of my overall goals for this year was that I wanted to be able to hold a handstand for 15 seconds. So it was just kind of like a pipe dream at the beginning of the year. And so if I work on my handstand practice, like I did this morning, for instance, I know that tonight I can give myself that little green check mark. So again, that's just kind of the nerdy thing. I don't think that would work for everyone, but it might be worth considering for anyone out there, what would work for you? Do you benefit from checklists or journaling or, I don't know, Post-its around the house, whatever that might look like in your own, well, there you go. See, so you know what works for you. So that's just kind of the personal angle, but, I also benefit a lot, and I probably, everyone says this in their own way, from just podcasts and books with people that I find really inspirational. So one author that I really love is Gretchen Rubin. She wrote the Happiness Project, which is not a dissimilar idea from the book that I wrote as well. I also really love her podcast, which is called Happier, that she co-hosts with her sister. A really good book I read recently is called The Illusion of Money by Kyle Cease. And it's, again, kind of touching, I think, a little bit on the identity aspect that you mentioned early on. So it examines kind of the social aspect of money, how all of us see money, how it affects our own identity. And it's not just about money per se, but it's more about, reframing how the storylines that we tell ourselves about money can almost get in our own way or stop us maybe from trying the things that we actually want to be doing or that might ultimately bring about the most value long term. So that's a really good one. It's not very long. And I also really love reading biographies of people who have done great things or who have overcome huge odds. So actually the last book that I read was a really great biography of the Wright brothers by David McCullough. And man, it's just amazing to think of what some people have done that have had such impact on the rest of us, 100 some years later now. So if they can overcome those types of odds, then I really don't have much of an excuse to try to do something for a smaller amount of people.
Yeah, humbling.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for sharing those great resources. I'll definitely check out a couple of those.
Yeah, I recommend them.
Yeah, I don't think I've read either one of those books, so I will definitely check them out, and I'll be sure to put them in the show notes for everybody else listening.
Sure, yeah.
So I ask a lot of people this question, and what do you do when your mind tells you to stop, to not go get that yoga class in or not do that thing you know you should do to better yourself?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that happens to so many of us. Probably, well, the first thing that comes to mind linked to that question is that it's okay if you feel that way. I think a lot of times we can sort of pile guilt on top of ourselves that, oh, why don't I want to go to yoga? I should want to go to yoga. Yoga is good for me. Why don't I want to go? That's not helping.
No.
I think that, devoting even more attention or even more energy to trying to force yourself to feel a certain way when you just don't feel that way is not useful. So give yourself some compassion towards feeling that way if you ever do. I think what I find useful, what I try to remember, and I'm not always very good at it either, is to question the why behind that little voice in my head. So why don't I want to go to yoga? Is it because I'm genuinely exhausted, or I'm overwhelmed, or I've just kind of really got a lot of other things on my plate right now? Because in that case, the answer might be that I need to rest. That might be the best thing that I can do for myself. And that might be what my body needs today. And that's okay. If on the other hand, the why is that, I'm justifying to myself why I've earned an evening on the couch with a box of cookies rather than stretching or anything like that. Maybe I can recognize that's what's going on kind of behind that thought, the why behind the thought, and maybe I can challenge it, and maybe I can think to myself, well, how am I going to feel if I just put in, let's say, 10 minutes on my yoga mat right now? What are the odds that I'm going to feel better from now, 10 minutes from now doing that than if I hadn't? And that sometimes gets me to put in a little bit of extra effort that I might not have otherwise.
I think I do that all the time. And
I think a lot of us do, let's be honest.
I think it's just being human. And I think the why that I tell myself a lot of times is I have too many other things to do right now, and I'm running out of time. So I'll do it tomorrow. There's always I'll do it tomorrow, but we don't live in tomorrow. We live in the present. So then I need to tell myself it is a priority, and then I'll be able to do these other things that I need to get done better and faster, and then a lot of it is being in a better place for me mentally. I think that's what I need to remind myself. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's important too, because it's a little bit the chicken and the egg in a way. If you start to feel better, then you're going to be most likely more inclined to do more things that are good for you, right? So, yes. But in the beginning, that's tough to see or tough to kind of nudge yourself on.
It is. Well, let's see. So the last question that I ask everybody is the change the world question. Okay. If you were able to pick only one short message sent completely anonymous to every person in the world, and they would really listen and take it to heart, what would that one message be?
So I'm glad you told me in advance that this was going to be a question, because I really had to think about it. What I think it came down to for me is it would be two short questions that I would want people to ask themselves. The first question is, what can I do for myself today? And the second question is, what can I do for somebody else today? And that doesn't have to be anything great or impressive or grand. It might just be, hey, today for myself, I'm going to eat a little bit better than I did yesterday. And for somebody else, maybe I take the trash down, which is usually something my husband does, but maybe today I just do that little small thing for him. And I think if all of us could ask ourselves these questions each day and act on it, I mean, that's a lot of kindness that would be going around the world. So I think that's a nice thing to imagine could be possible.
I agree. And I'm sure asking yourself the first question, what can I do for myself? And, and that, if you do that, then you're able to help other people out better then and fulfill this second question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. If I do 10 minutes of yoga.
Something to strive for all of us.
Yes, that's a good one. Well, can you share with us how we can connect with you? And then we're going to say goodbye.
Yeah, sure. So the best way to find me is on YouTube. So it's Yoga with Joelle. Joelle is spelled Joelle. If you happen to be a French speaker, I also have a second channel called Yoga avec Joelle. Exactly the same idea, as you can imagine. And if you do connect with me on YouTube, please leave me a comment. Let me know that you found me through this podcast. I love getting comments. I still do my best to respond to every single one, and I would love to hear from people.
Great. Yeah, well, thank you. And after the show, head over to behindthefitness.com. You'll find links to videos for each episode, links to connect with Joelle, and more. And of course, be sure to check out one of Joelle's classes online. Joelle, thank you so much for spending time with us and letting us get to know you. It was truly powerful.
My pleasure. Thanks so much, Ted.